Oh, it's going to be a good day. Welcome, everybody. This is the GnomeCast. I have a couple of guests. Three guests, actually, would be a better way to phrase that. Welsknight is back again. We didn't get enough of the soapbox last time. Unfortunately, I don't have permanent artwork to manage that, but that's all good. We are joined by DCDungeonMaster, who is on the patron side of things for me. And we have the infamous or famous, or however you wish to describe it, SidAlpha as well, to chat about video games and all things related to video games and the industry. So let me go back. We'll start that again, just right from the left there. Wells, who are you? Where can they find you? And how does all this stuff work for you?
Well, I am Welsknight, the sole proprietor and owner of Welsknight Gaming and Wells After Dark, two YouTube channels that do the gaming thing. I am primarily a family-friendly YouTuber. That's my main channel. Do a lot of indie games, Minecraft, that kind of stuff. Second channel is for games that just don't really fit on the main channel and for my own sanity. And you can find links by finding, there's links around somewhere. I'm sure you'll have stuff in the description of the video and someone will put it in the Twitch chat.
Indeed, so. And Welsknight plays on Twitter, I do believe. All right. Moving across the bottom of the panel there, we've got SidAlpha. Where can they find you, and what do you do?
I try to do as little as possible. No, I am a YouTuber. My content focuses mainly on industry commentary, video game news, reviews. Sometimes I do first impressions. People forget that I'm actually a critic as well, that I review video games. But most of my content lately has been focused on the news aspect of things, especially surrounding the past couple of weeks, a lot of EA stuff. So it's been rather interesting with that. And I stream on the weekends here on Twitch, but I decided to forego my Saturday stream, or at least delay it a little bit, because when Tarmack says, "Hey, you want to come on the show?" you say yes. That's just all there is to it.
That's the response that I demand, damn it. Absolutely. Oh, good stuff. All right. And DC, tell people about what you're up to. I know you've got a YouTube channel, and you're a burgeoning indie developer as well. You're getting into the game development side of the coin.
Yes, I am. Currently doing two YouTube channels. I'm the head of Daybreak Commentaries. It's my standard Let's Play channel. Everyone's got to have one. But my main channel is where I try to be. That's sort of on my more serious side. I sort of try to do like an extra credits meets Jim Sterling, Tarmack, where I try and cover various things, covering the gaming itself, covering topics on game design and development, as well as, covering, news topics and relevancies pertaining to the game industry as a whole. I do occasional streams here on Twitch, but now I'm trying to break into sort of every aspect of it. The more I do on YouTube, the more practice I get, so the more development experience I have. And I'm also a freelance game design consultant. I've helped out a few friends.
Does everything. I love it.
Yes, sir.
I love it.
The only thing I haven't done is get a job at GameStop, sell my soul to the devil. Thank
goodness for that. All right. Well, what I wanted to, and we did this last time, and I like the idea of starting kind of, the news is so depressing. This last month has been just the worst, and we're going to get that into the end. So if you're into depressing nonsense, about 45 minutes from now, we'll be into that stuff. I wanted to start off and talk about the games that are fun lately. Things that are exciting people. They don't have to be new games. They don't have to be something that just came out, but stuff that what are you playing? What are you really enjoying? I've been playing so much Horizon Zero Dawn over the last few weeks. It's just so much fun. And it's got, I know it has the map clutter. I know that it's bad for that. I get that. There's just so much menial bullshit to do along the whole way. But man, for a PlayStation 4 game, it is gorgeous. And
it is, especially on the budget that was made on.
Yeah, and it's got, it has a great character. It has a I think it's a great storyline. I've heard, some contention otherwise, but man, it's just so much fun. So let's start with Sid. What are you playing lately that's really good? That's just so much fun.
What have I been playing lately that's really good? Not much, to be honest. I've been streaming. I've been streaming like older, I suppose you could say older now, BioWare games on the weekends, just so I can actually get some playtime in on some stuff. So right now I'm playing through Dragon Age Inquisition, and I've actually been really looking back at the older games like Baldur's Gate and Knights of the Old Republic and things like that, and I realized I can mod the piss out of these.
Yes,
It's
you can.
awesome. And so I don't know, I've really been, because of everything with the current modern video games and how they're just money machines.
Depressing to see.
And it's just frustrating. It's like I'm kind of just like running home back to what I know and what's familiar, just for like, even just for personal private playtime.
Mhm.
And it's been great because I've been looking back through. I was like, oh, HD mod for this, yes, please. So it's going back to the older video games has really gotten me to delve a lot more into the modding scene and the modding community, especially through Nexus mods and things like that.
Mhm.
And it's really been great seeing all these things that have come out for these games. Some of these games have had complete conversion mods and everything else to go with them, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, when you see the modders, because tech moves along so quickly, right? As long as the engine is not that grumpy with it, you can have like a full HD mod for old games. Like they replace all of the game asset. It's almost disgusting the amount of work that these guys put in, right, for a passion project.
Especially for like a HD texture mods where it's like for like old games like Baldur's Gate, like that's not just like retouching. Those are completely redone from scratch texture.
Oh yeah.
Those are baffling to see.
Absolutely. So speaking of BioWare, though, have you seen that Beamdog is doing Neverwinter?
I heard something.
Neverwinter on mobile, right?
No. It's basically it's the same thing that. Thanks. No, what they're doing, it's the same thing that Beamdog always does. And so whether you like it or dislike it, they're effectively taking the old BioWare games, right? They went through Baldur's Gate.
They're doing an enhanced
Baldur's Gate 2. So they're doing an enhanced version of Neverwinter, which, I mean, there's only so good that Neverwinter can look. It's quite an old game. Even a full graphical redesign might not be quite enough for that. But I was stoked because I got to work a little bit on some of the premium modules back in the day. So there was a lot of time spent on that game for sure.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely buy that. I think I've actually ended up purchasing over the course of the years 3 copies when it was all said and done of most of those older games, Baldur's Knights, Neverwinters, Icewind Dale trilogies, because a couple of times friends would outright steal them. And it's like, oh, I have Neverwinter Nights. Oh, but here's the Neverwinter Nights Platinum Edition. And then, all these other editions is like, I must have them.
Yeah.
So I still have like multiple copies of the game hanging around somewhere.
Oh yeah, we've still got just binders, the old CD binders with discs lying around, Diablo and all that, and hopefully there's a CD key along with it. Otherwise, best of luck to you. DC, what are you
going to be looking for a decade-old key gen?
Yeah.
Oh, what was that?
DC, what are you playing that's exciting and amazing and positive news?
I mean, if I were to list off all the games that I've sort of been trickling down in my backlog, we'd be here all day. But the ones that sort of stand out on my mind, I've been going back, especially like they've been recently adding fighters. I've been playing a lot of Injustice 2.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great game. I love the original Injustice, and I think what the gameplay improvements to Injustice 2 are just amazing. The more traditional games, I've actually been on a Zelda binge. I've been playing through the series again. Twilight Princess HT on my Wii U. Still have my Wii U. The poor sad thing. Breath of the Wild, stuff like that. Taking a break from Odyssey, actually. There's just too many damn moons. I guess game. I mean, I've still been hooked on it for almost 2 years now. Final Fantasy 14.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's definitely one I've sort of been going on and off, trying to pace myself on, because you never want to binge an MMO.
Yeah, I really want to try Odyssey. I just don't have a Switch. And the more time that goes on, the more likely that that's going to change, because I have to apologize to.
More impressed with the thing, right?
I have to apologize to Nintendo. I said some very mean things, and I'm deeply sorry.
I will never apologize to Nintendo
about your fake tablet gaming console that turns out it's actually really fun, because, unlike a regular tablet, they have controllers, right? That's the difference. That's what makes the difference. Your Samsung tablet could play those games, the higher end sort of thing. They just don't have controls. Touch controls are awful. So yeah, I really want to play Odyssey. I really want to play Breath of the Wild and Mario Rabbids. I mean, some of this stuff is just looking so good. It really is.
Like the Switch has just been killing it. Like, it really is an impressive little thing. Like it is like just that, an impressive little thing. And you wouldn't expect it to sort of stand up to this current generation. It's tech wise, it's about slightly, it's sort of like in between, a little more powerful than, say, PS3 360, but not as powerful as like PS4, Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I mean, it's Nintendo owning up to their strengths, because what's the one area they've always killed? The handheld market.
Oh,
3DS was a killer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's focusing on the games, right? These are system seller games, and you think to like the PlayStation 4, what system seller games were there? Well, Bloodborne,
at launch,
for sure.
Probably just Last of Us Remastered.
Yeah, I mean, you can't necessarily say at launch, because I mean, Odyssey was nowhere near the launch of the Switch, and should have been, in my view. But it's still just, it's interesting to see it when they really put out a great title. I mean, Horizon Zero Dawn was that for the PS4 as well. Like, it's a system seller. People buy that system for that game, just like they do with Zelda and Mario, right? They finally got them out. They're going to have the same thing happen if they put out a proper Metroid game, a proper Donkey Kong or something along those lines, and they'll see the sales spike again. It's just they did manage to hit right before the Christmas season, which is fantastic to see.
Well, the thing is, you brought it up. It's sort of a misconception that a lot of people have been having. The Wii U didn't really have that strong of launch games, like, first week games that came out.
Mm.
But what a lot of people sort of seem to forget is the most important aspect is launch window. Yeah, I could have the best games, like super system sellers, coming out same day as the console. But if it can't keep up that momentum over the first year, that console is dead. That's exactly what happened with the Wii U.
Yeah. I mean, the Wii U had a different problem.
The window is more important, and with that, I think the Switch has had one of the best launch windows we've ever had since the PlayStation 2.
Perhaps. I don't know. I mean, the Wii U had a different problem, is that nobody knew what it was for, right? It was
True.
Basically a Wii with a special controller in most people's eyes, which wasn't the case.
Yeah, it was marketing, lack of third party, not a strong, first 2 years.
Yeah, they made a few mistakes. Wells, what are you playing other than Warhammer?
Still playing Warhammer. Lots and lots of Warhammer. Total War. Man, so good. So, I mean, part of the advantage of being me and basically being someone who plays video games for a living is that I get to play a lot of stuff and and enjoy it.
Wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah, I know, right? The ones that stand out right now, RimWorld, we talked about it a little bit last time.
Yep.
RimWorld just got an update, beta 18. So I'm playing that and enjoying it immensely and failing epically, but enjoying myself nonetheless.
Did they add anything big in it, or?
They added some new stuff. There's new biomes to live in, like new terrain and features. There's a whole bunch of, there's a massive slew of new stuff. Pretty big update. And then the other one that I'm playing is City of Brass. That's the other one that a lot of people probably haven't heard of. It's a first-person roguelike set in like an Arabian Nights themed world. It's super good, and it's a lot of fun.
I should know what that is, and I totally don't.
It's sounding familiar. Like I'm an addict for roguelikes. You're not talking about Ziggurat, are you?
No, it's called City of Brass.
Oh, City of Brass. Sorry, I probably missed the.
I need to look that up. Hang on a second. So that's they're in early access.
Titled.
I actually need to look that up.
Yeah, confused.
Jim Sterling covered it about 2 months ago. It's in early access right now on Steam. It actually just got a big update. Well, it got an update. I don't know if I'd call it a big update, but it got an update. I think last week or something like that. It's progressing. And it's really good. I mean, it's fun.
So
and I
big sort of Arabian Nights whips and scimitars and
and all that kind of stuff.
Wow, that actually looks really cool.
Yeah, undead enemies and annoying genies that shoot fireballs at you and all sorts of crazy stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Honestly, it kind of reminds me of like a enemy design, enemy patterns. Kind of reminds me of Ziggurat, just with melee weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
And as with any roguelike, there's a slew of different items and gear and stuff like that you can get. Mm-hmm. And actually, one thing that I really like about it is, so the levels come in like sets of 3, right? So you fight you go through 2 levels, and then on the 3rd level, there's a boss, right? And then the next set, 2 regular levels, and then a level with a boss. And when you beat one of the bosses, you unlock a portal, so you can start at that point in the game from then on. So, like, if you don't want to play through the first 6 levels ever again, as long as you've beaten the first 2 bosses, you can just skip right to level 7.
Okay, so it's a permanent check.
So taking like the Binding of Isaac kind of route of you now have permanently unlocked these items in the item pool.
I really like that for roguelikes, especially.
I think the items are all unlocked right off the bat. Like you have to come across them. But it's more like a permanent checkpoint, like in the game. So like even if you die, you can start back up there. Yeah. So like if it was Isaac, you could basically start on like the depths right off the bat.
Yeah. No. That's. I mean that's where you get into the roguelite versus roguelike.
Hand of Fate sort of does that too, doesn't it? Where like once you complete like a row and unlock one of the artifacts, you could just you get to keep that progression, I think.
I don't know. I haven't played Hand of Fate. It was one that I wanted to, and I just have not gotten around to it.
I've been trying to finish it actually, so I can move on to Hand of Fate too.
Yeah, to my mind, that's with roguelikes and roguelites, that having that unlockable progression is key for me. Otherwise, I'm sitting there going, I don't have the time to waste on this.
Because otherwise at that point, you're if you die, you're risk losing all that progression.
Well, you just get real tired of playing through the first 3 levels.
Yeah, this is what happens when you get a little bit older. Right, when you get a little bit older, you start to lose patience for all of that. I'm going to do exactly the same mission every same time. Like I cannot play Dota or League or Overwatch or any of these things anymore because I don't want to grind rank. I don't want to play the same thing every day, 5 different matches in a row. It's just, I just don't have the patience for it.
Sounds like what you need is microtransactions.
Yeah, open a loot box and you'll have a rare chance of unlocking a portal to the end of the game. No,
a sense of accomplishment.
There you go.
EA phrase I do, or sense of pride and accomplishment. I think.
Yeah. But one thing I would point out is that, like, as a content creator, it's a little bit different as well, because like you're a lot more, if you're not recording your stuff, you're not as worried about like the content. But when everything you're playing is recorded and put on YouTube, you get very cognizant of the fact that you're basically playing the same level over and over and over and over again and just dying repeatedly because you're terrible at the game.
And it also doesn't help that the recording curse is a thing for a reason.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it can cause people to get burned out. It's like, why are we watching this person just horribly murder themselves on this same level 30 times?
Right. And like, I think as a YouTuber, like that checkpoint in the roguelite is amazing, you know, because it's like, okay, well, we finally managed to progress and now we can move forward. And then there's like kind of a definite endpoint to the series too. It's like once you beat the game, you know, series finished.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's like for me, it gets especially draining because like the way I do it, my Let's Plays over on my over on Daybreak is I try to, unless it's a game I really know, like I'm an addict for the Arkham games, so I don't need to do it. But like for other games, I try to do a test playthrough, so I'm essentially playing the entire game twice in a row.
Yeah,
I can get especially draining.
I do not have the patience for that. I making it through a game the first time around sometimes is difficult enough. So Sid rather delicately was moving us in the direction of the topic of the month. Good Lord, the game industry has just.
I mean, can we just say with the tagline, EA screwed the pooch?
Everybody's screwing the pooch. So I kind of tentatively titled this little section "Where Gambling Ends, Gaming Begins," and everything has just been ridiculous lately. It started with the wonderful EA nonsense around Star Wars Battlefront 2, how they just reached way too far, and they kind of got caught with their pants down a little bit. The internet revolted enough that mainstream media started picking up the story, and apparently Disney made a phone call and said, fix this, because Disney doesn't care about loot boxes. Right? They don't care about loot boxes at all. They care about the image of Disney.
The image of Star Wars, especially since at
so
this time,
what I want to
we're
do,
a few weeks away from Star Wars The Last Jedi.
Yeah, I mean they can't afford to have any negative PR. That's their biggest concern. But we've had a couple of changes, or a couple of things happen a little bit more recently. To start with, a little while back, a couple of countries had decided they were going to look into the gambling situation. So it was what was the
Belgium,
first one?
Australia,
Belgium.
and UK are the ones I know.
Yeah, and the Danish
and Netherlands
got involved. And so the Danish Gambling Authority actually did sort of a little ruling on this. I don't know if it was quite as heavy as you might expect for legal use. But they basically said that loot boxes can be gambling if the items can be traded, which does mean that, according to them, the Star Wars Battlefront stuff is not. But Valve is. I really liked seeing them write it that way. Because
items that can be traded. So
CS:GO,
CS:GO, Team Fortress 2.
I was actually bringing this up to Tarmack last night. With that ruling, you think that might be grounds for revisiting the Team Martin Pro Syndicate CS:GO Lotto case?
I mean, it's possible. So the thing about Team Martin and Pro Syndicate is that what they did doesn't have anything to do with the game. The game didn't matter, really. What Valve was doing, like the Valve system is you can buy and sell these things on the marketplace and you get Steam credit for it. And they had an API in Steam that allowed you to do that from a third-party site. And so what Team Martin and Pro Syndicate and what was the other guy's name? He always gets forgotten and he really should.
Josh OG or something like that?
OG.
There's something like that.
There's so many of them.
There is. But what they did is they created a site totally outside of this that had their own gambling stuff involved. And so all it was doing a trading call back and forth between Steam to trade items from one account to another and do real cash gambling for it. But there was I was asked in Discord recently about microtransactions and what are the good and what are the bad versions out there, and it kind of made me giggle because the exception was said in the question, excluding something good like Dota. I believe that Valve is the worst loot box microtransaction system anywhere, because it's the only one that has real world value.
Because you can actually trade it, and it ties into, like, if even with the trading cards, if you don't want the trading cards, you can trade those in for money. And that's the big problem with the dirty devs, to steal a word from Sid.
Yeah. Sid, go ahead.
Yeah, with the difficulty with Steam is because of their API that they make readily accessible to any business. It has given birth to these massive quantities of gambling sites for PUBG, CS:GO, Team Fortress 2, and all of the others.
Mm-hmm.
And these the thing with these sites is because of this API, they're actually able to bypass the Steam trading factor, so they're able to trade these items for cheaper than what you would be able to buy them directly from Steam.
Right. Because no transaction
fee. So
fee.
They set themselves up in a position to where no matter what, they're making money off of you. It's just a question of how much. And then you factor in the unregulated gambling of their sites, because it's not gambling, because it's not real world money. It's just trading skins. And they're able to directly manipulate the win percentage rates on your spins at a drop of a hat, and you never know what that's going to be. They can set it to where it's impossible for you to win, or they can set it to where you're only able to win specific things.
Yeah. That's why I really liked the Dutch getting involved here.
Yeah, that's where I was going out with. Go.
It's just such a good thing to have somebody having actually come out and said yes if trading is involved, because if you look at the gambling definitions out there, none of them ever say cash. It's not mentioned, right? Because if I bet a house or a car, it's still gambling, even if it's not cash. It doesn't matter. And Steam credit is as good as money on the Steam platform, and you can buy and sell with it. You can buy games. I mean, everybody seems to look at that model, and they go back to the whole it's cosmetic argument all the time, and that's what makes that gambling okay, right? You know, gambling in Overwatch is okay because it's all cosmetic, and in Dota it's okay because it's all cosmetic. Real world value involved makes it a bit more of a problem. Wells, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, there's an argument to be made for the fact that even for things where like Battlefront, we use Battlefront since it's kind of the obvious example that everyone's familiar with right now. I mean, accounts can be sold. If I have a maxed out Battlefront account, I can sell that for real world money too. You know, it may violate EULA, but it happens all the time. People sell, their accounts with all these unlocked things on a daily basis. Huge industry. So I mean, that's one aspect of it. And then the other thing too is this, I think if you're going to focus on the gambling aspect of loot boxes, I don't think an item being cosmetic makes it okay, because one of the things that always comes up is it promotes gambling. It targets people based on psychology and all these behaviors that manipulate people, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's the same if it's a cosmetic item that's coming out of the loot box, or if it's something that's actually tied to progression. So I don't think you can say cosmetic gambling is fine, but progression gambling, that's a no-go. We can't have that. So I don't know. It's one of those things.
To me, they're two separate issues, right? The idea of cosmetic versus gameplay affecting, one of those two is clearly worse than the other. However, both of them have to reach a certain bar of you are immediately, you're gambling already, right? You've already done wrong before you even get to the second question.
Yeah, it's like they're being treated as different things when they're essentially, the same principle.
Yeah.
Well, you have to remember that a lot of this, because the idea of gambling with games and stuff has been around for a lot longer than people might think. I mean, you look at collectible card games and even, baseball trading card packs that have been around since however long. Those are essentially a form of gambling because you're purchasing an item where the contents are unknown.
Yeah, I remember booster packs went under fire.
There is a risk-reward value there. The difficulty is when you get into a system like these where they can use slot machine mechanics where the drop rates can be controlled and manipulated. And that's one thing that a lot of people really hate when it boils right down to it, is that idea of manipulation, that idea that they might be getting taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And so a lot of games, are deemed more acceptable, like Warframe would be a very good example, where they have very clear set static drop rates for individual items. Then you have companies like Activision Blizzard, who, while yes, they disclose the drop rates for different tiers of items, whether they be standard or epic, the individual drop rates that were required by China to disclose, they went to great lengths and spent ungodly amounts of money to avoid disclosing those drop percentages for the individual items.
Yeah,
because I think it had to do with the
huge
duplicates.
moneymaker for them, and they have the capability to manipulate that.
Yeah.
To help drive that feeling of need in people.
It's
so they might maintain the percentage there of the different tiers, but they'll slide which item in that tier base is the more common of those.
I particularly like this because you have to be careful not to get tinfoil hat-ish. But this is a thing that has been hinted at and suspected for a long time in Vegas, right, in the casinos. They're required to post a certain drop percentage, right, for money, effectively, right? So they have your win rate percentage listed as different between the Vegas Strip versus Fremont Street versus like different areas in the city. But there's nothing saying, because that's just an average across all gamblers, right? There is nothing that would necessarily stop them, except technically the rules, from tailoring it to the individual to try and convince them that doing a certain thing, rubbing the screen, gives them luck, right? Or
the odds for a particular person while raising the other one for another.
Yeah,
plus
or
one, minus
you're
one,
you're
that's
playing
still
a game, right? And they decide that they're going to match you up against a bunch of worse players right after you bought a bunch of loot boxes. You'd have no way of ever proving that, right? But all of a sudden you have a bunch of really great wins after you just bought some loot boxes, and you've got that feeling in your head of, geez, a just sort of unconscious thought of maybe those are connected.
It doesn't help with the recent news of Activision's patents being filed.
Yeah, that was I think that woke people up a lot to how much these companies are investing in being able to drive these different styles of microtransactions and being able to somewhat manipulate people at the back end without people even realizing it.
Well, yeah, and I would say that the majority of people probably don't even realize that that's something that's possible or happening. The technology certainly exists to have some sort of an algorithm that says, okay, they're going to purchase loot boxes, and every like 7th loot box will give them something just good enough to try and get them to buy something new. You know, we'll give them that. Oh, they play a lot as this class. We'll give them an item for this class, the 3rd loot box. And then, we'll give them a legendary thing for a class that they don't play. So they'll think, oh, we can get legendary. So they'll buy 5 more loot boxes, and and so on and so forth. Like, the technology totally exists to manipulate that in real time on an account basis via some sort of an algorithm or whatever. I mean, Activision filed a patent for it, for Pete's sake. Yeah. And a lot of people, I think, when they're looking at this whole loot box gambling thing, that doesn't click with them. They're just thinking, oh, well, is it gambling? The odds are the same for everybody. No, they're probably not. I mean, with a company at the size and resource level of like EA or Activision or whatever, they absolutely have the capability to completely just stack the deck in their favor.
And the math of Overwatch is quite interesting, right? We know roughly how long it takes to get a legendary in an Overwatch box, right? However, that percentage chance increases the more boxes you open where one does not drop. So all they've done is put a line at the drop rate will be this, assuming you have bought X number of boxes, right? And it can easily be tailored before that. Actually, I found it quite interesting, Sid, that you were talking about a lot of people don't realize how long this has been going on. Interestingly enough, the gambling industry is what built the game industry. Gambling used to be called gaming. That was what it was before. The arcades were all built by Midway, Konami, right? Williams, all of these different companies that built the arcade cabinets that were coin-op, that were all, not...
Yeah, coin-ops were
it was gambling for kids.
For gambling.
It was gambling for kids, right? You weren't going to get any money out of it, so it was okay for the kids to do exactly the same thing, and it was made by the same people that made the slot machines, right? And then those people went on to make the early, right, the a lot of the Atari games and Nintendo and all that kind of stuff. Your 3 Lives, 3 Continues, right? Just blisteringly hard because all they knew was arcade games. And
Nintendo started off as a playing card company.
So it's interesting to see the long-term sort of connection of the game industry to the gambling side and how it's kind of starting to come a little bit full circle.
Yeah, it's always been there to a certain extent, even well before online gaming was ever a thing. It's been there since the very beginning, and it will continue to be there. The question is, how much are we willing to accept? Where's the line in the sand, as it were? And I know that's got a lot of people concerned, because you constantly hear there's a tug of war going on right now, because you have one camp of gamers who don't want government regulation. They want the industry to self-regulate, which is what the ESA and the ESRB were designed to do, was to perform self-regulation. And the thing is, though, they're not doing that right now. I mean, Battlefront 2 and all of these other games shows that right now they're interested in taking it as far as they possibly can, so they can just ease off just enough to not generate a riot. And then they know that's where we can be happy with. And then we'll wait 6 months to a year, and then we'll push again.
If I can
ease off. So with that self-regulation there, with that aspect, it's simply making them too much money. And when you got nothing but dollar signs in your eyes, there's no way you're ever going to back off. And so the self-regulation aspect, I really don't think is going to happen.
Yeah. If I can piggyback off of that, that's exactly what happened with the ESRB. The game companies refused to self-regulate. They said, like Sega had their own rating system that claimed to be fine, but it was just vague. They only had 3 tiers, and it was just vague. It wasn't until we had, the 3 infamous games. You had Night Trap, you had the Genesis version of Mortal Kombat, and what was the other one? The Konami one with where they had the pacifier gun. Or the Justifier gun.
I don't remember.
I don't recall.
It was the one where it was a cop shooter, a cop game where like a crime shooter. But it was those 3 games, specifically Night Trap, that pushed people to ask for legislation and for government regulation. And it was when they were threatened with the proposal of government regulation that they finally said, okay, we'll self-regulate for real this time.
Yeah, so I mean that's what the ESRB is right now, and I think the best case scenario for the game industry going forward is for the ESRB to take over this gambling thing and start to stop them from doing it all the time. But I don't know that that's going to happen. This one got bigger than I expected it to.
I don't think so. I mean, a lot of people have to remember that the ESRB is not a regulatory body. It's not a governmental body. The ESRB was created by the gaming industry.
They're an informative body. That's the purpose isn't to regulate games. It's to inform parents about the content that the games contain.
Yeah, and they're run by the AAA publishers, just like the ESA has multiple, all the people that are on the ESA are, board members of AAA publishers.
Is the ESRB run by that? I thought it was independent.
The ESRB is almost entirely funded by the ESA, and the ESA is almost entirely funded by the AAA publishers.
Oh, okay.
That's how the funding path works. So the ESRB is effectively a self-regulating arm of the ESA government lobby group. That's really the way it kind of pans out. Wells, did you take a look at the UFC thing?
Briefly, yes. I prepared. I'm a very prepared person.
Where you can in their loot boxes, you can unlock a stronger punch. Like just a base punch it's not like some kind of special ability, right? Like the Star Wars Battlefront 2 Boba Fett does more missile damage if you can ever get a chance to play as him. Right. This is a base punch, and are they just what the hell's going on? How far are they going to go? Is this as far as they're going to go, do you think, Wells, or are they going to take the
Well,
piss
it depends. Are they going to be able to push the envelope further than this? Because if they can, they will in a heartbeat. I mean, and you know, to be fair, they're a business, they're a corporation. Their whole point is to make money and to give value to their shareholders and stuff like that. So, you know, am I surprised that they are doing things like this? And I mean, and on top of that too, the people, for the most part, I think, who are, you know, pushing for microtransactions on this level are not you know, avid gamers who love video games, and no, they're just people who want to make money. You know, you got a bunch of elderly gentlemen sitting around a conference room table in a very high-rise office building and saying, "How can we get more money?" You know, but I mean, they'll get away with it with UHC because it's not Star Wars. I mean, it's essentially what they have here is they have Battlefront 2 again, but UFC instead of Star Wars, and the UFC games have a much smaller target group and target market and interested market than Star Wars does.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I'd say it's also not only that, but it's also, you know, it's a sports genre, and I mean, companies have already been able to get away with the stuff like this for years because of the sports games. You know, the I think the big one of note is like FIFA, where, you know, you have microtransactions rooted into the like the Make Your Team Career campaign. So, you know, it's sort of, I feel like they will be able to get away with it purely because, as bad as it is, it's in a genre or market audience that's sort of, what's the word? Sort of pacified to it.
I see you nodding a lot, Sid. Is there? Do you think there's a fundamental difference between sports franchise games and the rest of this? Because it really does seem like there's a different bar.
Well, a lot of it is, you know, the mentality behind the, you know, you see some crossover always between the different genres and styles of video games, but with the sports genre, you have a lot of people that just play the sports genres, and you have to remember that the sports genre, your FIFAs and UFC and all that, that is EA's big money maker in the gaming industry.
Right.
And a lot of that is because they've been doing these exact same styles of microtransactions for longer with sports games than they have with any other. So that's where some of that, you know, kind of deadened the sentences when it comes to those people that play sports games versus the rest of the gaming industry. It's been going on longer for them, and they are, you know, a smaller subsect. And, you know, sports games aren't as readily played by people that aren't interested in sports, whereas a lot of other games have a much broader cross section of a player base.
Yeah.
And so because of that, you know, their nerves have been deadened by just constantly getting beat over the head with these. And whereas the rest of the gaming industry is just waking up to the fact that this is happening.
Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of this outrage and this frustration's coming in. And everyone who plays sports games is like, yeah, it's been like that for forever. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, and the thing with sports games too, I mean, the people who play sports games avidly are basically buying the same game over and over and over again every year with a roster update. You know, they're fine with spending money on things that might be a little bit unnecessary, shall we say? Yeah, you know,
I mean, like, you know,
I'll drop $60 on Madden 2007. I mean 2017. What's different? The roster, and maybe there's a career mode now where I can, you know. I
mean, like with gameplay adjustments, like that really only happens like every 3 years. Like there's you know, new gameplay. Like yes,
if even.
And well, yeah, it's like if you compare like Madden 2003, Madden 2007, and Madden 2014. Like they each play and feel very differently at the very least, because, you know, engine updates and all that. But like, you know, with the yearly releases, honestly, that could all just be done with like a $20 DLC or like roster update.
Yeah, but if you could sell it, why would you ever do
money in that?
Yeah, but if I can sell it for 3 times that and people will buy it, why wouldn't I? That's just good business.
Yeah, and it's like going back to like, yeah, the sports games are EA's biggest money seller. Is like, you know, every year you hear the people online and the audience complaining about EA. We get it, sports. Just get over with it, and let's see what other games you have for us. But the thing is, they're not talking to, you know, people like us. They're talking to the people who actually play those games. And the thing is, there is a big enough market that, they can't get away with it.
Absolutely. The thing that makes me curious is it almost looks like where sports games right now are where the rest of the game industry is going to be in 5 to 10 years.
Probably.
I was curious, you know, and I wonder if there's a psychological component to some of this as well as to, I mean, obviously they did it in sport games earlier, but was there something about those people that makes them more likely to not think it's an issue? Is it a group that maybe doesn't take part in the online gamer community? Right. Just to go back to my own high school experience. Right. The jocks never wanted to play video games and would never admit that they were. Is there a mentality difference perhaps in the clientele, the people that are doing this? They just don't care about Reddit and they don't care about this kind of, so the issues never come up.
I'm sure to some extent. Absolutely.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't play enough sports games to really be able to tell you. So.
I think it's more of, I guess, not necessarily consumer apathy, but it's more like, you know, we've seen it before. Like, you know, it's like sort of when loot boxes started to become a thing. Like a lot of people were saying, "Oh, it's just cosmetic," and then when it started showing up in games that they cared about, they're like, "Oh crap!" Now I realize the problem. It's like it's less consumer apathy and more, "It's not my game. It's not a game I care about, so why should I care?"
Yeah, and I've been watching this for a long time on all the rest of the industry. I mean, the DRM back in the day was you read the 5th word in the 2nd sentence of the page 20 of the manual, right? And it has become steadily worse. I think like the idea of they're used to it, that I totally get. I'm just curious if maybe we can look at the sports group as to what they are right now to kind of see, you know what? The rest of the game community is going to be that apathetic in not too long unless we do something about it, unless people actually start to pay attention to these things.
Well, that's how it has been. I mean, the only reason why a lot of this has become an issue is like it was said before, you know, it's because this is Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And everyone loves Star Wars and everyone wants their Star Wars game and everyone wants a good Star Wars game and they're not getting that. I think if Star Wars Battlefront 2 was better than it was, this probably wouldn't have been as big of an issue. But the storyline we were given was very bland, very generic, very basic. And the gameplay itself was highly iterative of what we got with the first one. It's just the space combat was better.
Yeah. No, I really was
looking forward to the unique story that they were presenting, since it was, you know, a story we hadn't been introduced to before, you know, a new faction, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
What was the last good Star Wars game?
I forget what it was called, but it was Star Wars Battlefront for the PlayStation Portable. Oh. That's the last one I remember.
Hogwash. Star Wars Academy.
I had a lot of friends who used to play.
Yeah, Star Wars Academy. Okay.
Star Wars Academy was absolutely
that was pretty good. The Rogue Squadron and Rogue Leader games were pretty good.
Yeah, like the ones for the GameCube were amazing, especially like Rogue Leader.
Did you ever play Academy? No?
Yes, I did.
I mean, third person throwing the lightsaber.
I was actually more partial to the space simulator aspects of the game, like Star Wars Alliance and X-Wing versus TIE Fighter and TIE Fighter and X-Wing and all of those. You know, yeah. I glommed onto those immediately, and I think those are some of the most played games I've ever had.
My favorite was the original Dark Forces.
Yeah.
MS-DOS.
Ooh.
I played so much of that. I still remember all of the cheat codes off the top of my head for that game because I was probably like
use cheat codes.
Yeah, I was like 10. Cut me some slack. You know, I was like, I just want invincibility and I want to kill all the things.
So you should go back and try X-Wing versus TIE Fighter and see if you can still manage the controls. There are a lot of hotkeys for that game. Oh, of course.
I can manage the controls just fine.
As I recall,
A+.
a good chunk of the keyboard is mapped out in X-Wing versus TIE Fighter for a lot of different shenanigans, right?
The big one I remember, Star Wars game, Sid brought him up at the beginning, KOTOR. BioWare.
KOTOR was good.
KOTOR 1 and 2. KOTOR 2, that was BioWare was 1, 2 was Obsidian, right?
Yeah, 2 was Obsidian.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was released unfinished and broken.
Oof.
Yeah, so, which is
Obsidian.
That's the way Obsidian does things. It's unfinished, broken, and with a better storyline than the original. That's their method, right?
If I'm being entirely honest, I actually really enjoyed the Old Republic, the MMO.
Oh, was that Star Wars: The Old Republic? Yeah,
Yep.
That's
it
fine.
was
That
supposed
went
to be
free to play after a while, didn't it?
It went free to play after a year.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people didn't like it as much, but I actually really enjoyed it and put a lot.
Yeah, I
of time.
remember
I was really disappointed, as I was like, "Oh, there's gonna be a Knights of the Old Republic 3." Nope, it's an MMO. Well, fuck you.
Yeah.
I remember playing it for a bit.
I still played it.
I remember playing it for a bit, but this was when I was swamped with a lot of other MMOs. You know, I was playing DC Universe Online. I was trying to get into Final Fantasy 11. Mistake. Now I'm back on 14.
Yeah.
And now that I have successfully derailed the conversation.
Indeed, you have. We should let's get back. So I have one more thing that I had put through in the show notes on this particular topic, and that was wonderful. I'm reasonably 90% sure it was Strauss Zelnick.
Take-Two president chimes in on loot boxes and since they're not gambling.
So
again, in former article, right?
Take-Two is special. Take-Two is basically the company on the North American side that has shown exactly how much money you can make from loot boxes and microtransactions, right? I mean, everybody else is doing well. They are bringing in half of their overall revenue, completely eclipsing sales of GTA 5. And so he comes out and he basically says, as long as we give you, now this is not a direct quote, but as long as we give enough value, it's not gambling.
Honestly, this kind of doesn't surprise me since didn't Strauss-Zelnick sometime in the summer say something like along the lines of they're not taking enough money from consumers?
Yeah, oh yeah, because that's his job, right? But it's akin to saying as long as I drive fast enough, it's not vehicular manslaughter.
What do you expect him to say? Is he's gonna come out and say, "Oh yeah, it's totally gambling. We should be regulated"?
No, I totally agree. You're absolutely right. I guess I more expected him to not comment on it. And
you expected him to stay silent more than
because it's a pretty ridiculous statement that value somehow makes the difference.
Might makes right.
Well, again, it goes back to the loophole with the definition because there is no set monetary value for the things we got through loot boxes.
Yeah, but that's not. There is nothing in the definition that says monetary value. That's the thing, and that's why this is turning into a big topic of discussion.
I actually looked it up. The current legal definition of gambling is the wagering of money or something of value on an event with an uncertain outcome.
No, it's not. You don't look at definitions. Look at the gambling regulators' actual statements. What they will say, and this is true, not quite universally, but most of the most of the places out there. They'll say it's the wagering of a thing of value for a chance at another thing of value. They very rarely say monetary, because as soon as you say monetary, you exclude a whole bunch of other things, right? That's wagering a car or, whatever you're going to try and make a wager on. They don't want to limit themselves on that because it's dangerous. Right.
I remember, I think it was Belgium that tried to specify on the distinction. They don't care about the result. They don't care about what you put in. It's about the fact that there is a wager. Like, it's not the result.
As it should be.
It's not the what, it's the act. Like, the sheer presence of a wager is what classifies it as gambling. I think it was Belgium that said it. It might have been UK.
Well, let's throw out a hype.
That's, I think Tarmack and I have both said that till we were blue in the face, that it's not the end result that matters. It's the act of gambling itself. It's the pulling the lever that gives you.
It's the RNG. It's the
high. It's that random outcome. It's not the outcome. It's the anticipation.
Because that's the one that's the most psychologically threatening.
Go ahead, Wells.
Yeah, for the sake of discussion, how random does it have to be
random?
Considered?
Flip of a coin. Flip of a coin.
What do you mean? How random? Give me more to go on here.
For example, say there's a loot box, right? Company implements a loot box. You buy it for X amount of money, and it gives you something, right? What if there's a situation where say there are 3 expansions for the game, right? They'll say the expansions are $20 each. Just as an example, you buy this loot box for $10 and you get one of the 3 randomly, but it's guaranteed to not be one that you already have. Would you still consider that gambling?
Yes.
Yes.
Because you're talking about being able to get all 3 expansions for $30 rather than each one.
Again, you're still looking at you're still looking at the outcome. It's it's the anticipation of which one am I going to get. I'm going to get one. It's which one am I going to get.
You're going into it knowing that there's a random chance of getting something that you might not want, or not getting something that you do want. It's the RNG in and of itself that is the principle.
I see where you're going, Wells. Like
in addition to that, like, would that be acceptable? Even if it is gambling, is that a point where, okay, well, it's gambling, but there's one of 3 outcomes, and you know what I mean? Like, is that something that we'd be okay with as gamers? Because I mean, and for the record, I'm with you guys on this. But I think
is there a point at which the gambling is acceptable?
Right. Exactly. Like, is there a point that we look at and we say, okay, well, it's okay in this situation because these reasons, and like, where is
the difficulty? There is that level of what is deemed acceptable is going to be very individualized. Each person would determine differently what they would find acceptable based on their desire, their want, their monetary capacity. And so it's because it is that completely subjective that you can't really steer towards what would you find acceptable is what would be non-predatory. Because you would have to go with whether it be self-regulation or governmental regulation, you have to go with the aspects of what would make this the least predatory on the consumer.
Yep. I like where you're going with it, Wells, and I feel like this is a good place to close the topic, because I do not have a problem with gambling in video games. Not at the core of the argument. What I have a problem with is unregulated gambling in video games. There has to be somebody watching and making sure that it's honest. If they tell us you got a 50-50 chance of getting this thing, there needs to be some kind of regulator that's doing that. And there are other rules that need to be a part of it, right? No kids. There are these different sorts of things. We've agreed upon as a society that gambling is okay under these conditions. And maybe it's not okay in some countries, but like where you're going with this, I totally get it. An example of gambling that is so minor that nobody would ever care about it, right? You're paying for a random chance of 1 in 3 of getting one of the 3 expansions. You'll never get a duplicate, and it's exactly a third the cost to gamble as it would be to just buy one of the 3 in the first place. Nobody would ever really argue about that, I don't think. But it does meet the core sort of definition of the problem. I just want to see some kind of regulation on it. I really do. I think that's the biggest issue about all of this, is that nobody's watching it. Nobody knows if they're honest. They can say that they're honest until they're blue in the face, but they've lied, through their teeth for decades.
Countless times. Oh, yeah.
It's never going to change.
And I completely agree with that. I mean, gambling in itself, to my mind, what I deem acceptable, of course, is going to be different than what everyone else deems acceptable. And to me, it would have to be fully disclosed static drop rates for individual items, not just tiers of items. And, also the ability to directly purchase those as opposed to engaging in the RNG. That's what I would find acceptable. But at the same time, there has to be regulations to be able to prevent them from manipulating those drop rates, from catering to children. Because if it's gambling, then it should be treated as gambling with age gating and restrictions and everything like that. And a lot of people will argue, about taking responsibility for your own actions and things like that. And they're all... we could go off on that topic for hours and hours, covering so many different aspects of it. But if it's gambling, it should be regulated as such.
Yep. I think that's a good point to close this topic and take a brief break. We got ourselves about 7 minutes, give or take. We will be right back. All right. Welcome back. The second half of the show. So this part is a little bit more on other news, and this is the part I was talking about at the beginning. I would really like, a good 2-3 weeks, some nice solid time where all news was positive, because some of this is just depressing. But we have to talk about it because it is interesting and it is important to talk about. Destiny. Bungie decided that they were going to play a couple of games with their players, and other MMOs do this as well. Okay, so in endgame progression, there is always some kind of XP scaling, right? It's just a thing that is done. But what Bungie did is they hid it. The amount of experience that people were getting in the endgame material once they got, I believe it's level 20, and then they've got sort of power levels that exist after that, where the amount that it was showing in game versus what you were actually supposed to be receiving were totally different. So they were actually misleading their people instead of just having a scaling system of some kind. And shortly after the news broke, there was somebody on Reddit decided they were going to crunch the numbers, which somebody always does. They did the math. Bungie removed that system and then increased the XP level requirements so that the system was operating exactly as it had been before. Thoughts? I can't I see Sid just like, oh Jesus.
So to clarify, they removed the scaling factor, but in turn they increased the amount of XP required.
Yes. So effectively, the situation didn't change in any respect. It was exactly the same. Sid, you look like you might have some thoughts on this one.
Oh, so many. Yeah, I debated whether or not to do a video on this, but the problem is I played so little of Destiny that I wouldn't be able to accurately relate the leveling within the game, because I know my character's nowhere near level 20. So, but this falls back to the whole... this actually, to my mind, falls back to what we saw with EA and EA DICE over Battlefront 2 when they got caught with their pants down. Is what they will do is they will make a change that seems like a change where, in fact, nothing changes, to kind of outdate the outrage, as it were. So where nothing really changes, they still want that grind. They still want to push you towards that grind, because that, if they do, then they get more money from you because you spend more money on microtransactions. So what they were manipulating the system, and when they got caught, look at us, we made a change, when they changed other things at the same time. So nothing actually changed. It's deplorable, it's despicable, and we see these AAA publishers and developers do it all the time.
Yeah. Bringing up Battlefront, you're referring to the campaign rewards, correct?
Yeah, mainly the credits required to unlock, say, Luke or Darth Vader. They decreased those by 75%, but they also decreased the campaign rewards by 75% as well, and they made some other changes too.
Yeah,
although
so the situation was the same.
With that, they decreased the campaign rewards because the amount to unlock the main character from the campaign as a hero was also decreased. So the idea was you complete the campaign, and you get enough credits to unlock that main character upon completing the campaign.
Right.
Yeah, they
That's-
never wanted you to use the campaign credits to buy someone else. They like Darth Vader or Luke, they wanted you to use those campaign credits to unlock the character you played as in the campaign.
Yeah, well, and to be honest, with that particular thing in mind, I don't really have a huge issue with it, although I would rather they just like give you character upon completing
Yeah, but we're
the
seeing
campaign,
we're seeing an even more direct one-to-one shift with Destiny.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
DC, have you played Destiny 2 at all?
I haven't played Destiny 2. It's it's definitely one of the games I'm interested in because I've been hearing good things where it's improved on the faults that Destiny 1 had. But I guess in a general MMO standpoint, level like you said, level scaling, like experience scaling, that's nothing new. But I have not. The only time I've ever seen it in a negative stance where, you lose XP gains is when World of Warcraft originally implemented the system. What they did was if you grind for too long, you would get an XP penalty.
Mm-hmm.
With the Outrage, they essentially kept the same system, but the way it worked instead was now it was a rested bonus. Instead of, penalizing you for continuously grinding day to day, now you would get a temporary bonus to your XP. They essentially increase the overall XP and sort of like a net increase. So instead now it's a rested bonus where, if you take a few days off, you accumulate certain experience bonus.
Yeah.
That basically goes in that you earn extra experience up to a certain amount of time and you use up that arrested XP and then you go down to sort of the baseline experience.
Yeah, but the thing about that is that's really is just playing word games. What I liked about WoW is at least they were honest about it, right? It's there right up in your face. You can see what you're getting and everything's okay. But this is a lot like the net neutrality thing of, Comcast and whatever saying, oh, there will be no slow lanes. There'll just be regular lanes and fast lanes. Well, that's just word game nonsense. There is clearly one that is less than the other. And so giving a bonus instead of a penalty, the effect is the same. But again, I like that they're being honest about
with
it.
Warcraft, they actually did make an adjustment to make it feel more like a bonus where, how you have like rather than the penalty where it decreases you from the base, they make the base level what you get without the bonus. So they basically increased to sort of flipped it around.
Yeah, but that's what I mean is that it doesn't really fundamentally change the situation because you still have a situation where somebody who plays an awful lot is getting less than someone else. But again, to me, it's all about the honesty.
Yeah.
Well, also you have in-game purchasables in Destiny 2 that you purchase to increase your what is gained. Those are being affected by this as well. So
there
you
are
purchase
XP
something
boosters
for
in
an
Destiny?
XP boost, and then you're not getting the XP boost that was advertised.
Yeah.
So there are purchasable XP boosters in Destiny 2.
I can't remember if they're purchasable or craftable. One of the two.
Well, and like XP boosters, I mean, generally, like the one I have the most experience with, like Final Fantasy 14, there are XP boosters, but they only work up to a certain level. Like they're continuous and they just last to help you persist through like the early grind.
Right.
Like they'd cap off at level 30, level 50, stuff like that.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Wells?
Nope.
Don't ever want to play Destiny 2, eh?
There
did
are
not play
purchasable XP
Yeah,
boosts.
I didn't play Destiny 1. I have no intention of playing Destiny 2. Not really my genre, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we've tore a strip off of them sufficiently. There's really a whole lot else to say about that. I mean, obviously they made a mistake, and they haven't rectified that mistake. I'm going to skip the next one on the list at the moment. We'll come back to that. I don't want to go negative. So one of the questions that I had, and I because I'm not doing really a QA section here, but one of the questions that had been raised was the idea of positive microtransactions. What are the benefits of positive microtransactions? Is there a type that's okay? And the first thing for me that jumped to mind is that there is an obvious benefit to the size of a community by having a game be free to play. And so if the game is paid for by microtransactions, it will be more beneficial to the players of that game in having a wider variety and a bigger audience of people to play with or against. But I'm curious, let's start with Wells on this one and see if you have any thoughts on positive, like how can microtransactions be done well? What would it look like?
I think there can be certain circumstances where microtransactions or loot boxes or whatever could be a positive thing. There was a situation a while back. It was a few months ago. I don't remember exactly the game or anything, but there was like a developer who passed away, and they did like
Mike Forgy.
Shadow of War, Mike Forgy.
Shadow of War. Yeah. And that whole thing was a debacle. Like they completely messed it up. But the base idea of it, doing something like that to kind of honor a developer, and then if the revenue from that were to be like donated to the family, and it wouldn't have to be like a developer necessarily, it could be any sort of cause. Like that could be a positive thing. I think in the case of maybe there's like a real small indie title that's struggling, and they find the community wants to support them in some way, but they want to give something back. That might be a way to do it. I mean, I think there are situations where it could be done, and it could be done in a positive manner if it was handled correctly. But I can't think of any examples off the top of my head that have actually happened where I've looked at that and said, yeah, good job on implementing those microtransactions.
Okay. The way that you're describing that, actually, some of the things in World of Warcraft fit that reasonably well. They have done pets and mounts in the past that were charity items. So some of the hurricanes that have been going on recently, they'd put up a new vanity pet basically that was $15, and the money goes straight to emergency relief basically. So they have that in addition, of course, to their other systems. Sid, thoughts on positive microtransactions?
Oh, I mean, I could rip them to shreds for however long you want me to, but thoughts on positive microtransactions, I think that's basically the crux of it, is how it's handled, how it's implemented, and the intent behind it. Probably the most readily acceptable, the most positive influence I would agree with, the charity aspect that can be used for microtransactions, as long as they don't tie into any form of progression within the game itself. So cosmetic vanity items, things like that. Everyone falls back to cosmetic as acceptable or more acceptable than anything else. And they do that because, it lacks an impact to progression and interaction. So you avoid the pay to win nature of that. But, there are a lot, like with Mike Forgy, if WB had handled that better, that would have been an amazing thing. And what Blizzard does with they do that every year. They actually release a mount for some form of charity, apparently.
Yeah.
I didn't know that until after I'd posted my video about what they did this year. And then I had people tearing me to shreds. What are you talking about? They do this all the time. This is nothing new. Like, well, it's new to me. Okay.
How dare you be happy that I found something positive?
Yeah,
damn it!
Wow, somebody did actually something that benefits other human beings, and you're trashing me because I'm talking about it. Good job.
Sid, you're a news channel. You're only allowed to report on depressing topics.
Man, I mean, it cuts me deep.
That's fine.
That face right there, that's the face of a man who realizes that I'm speaking the truth.
Yeah, that's how that works. DC, positive microtransaction thoughts.
I could go for a while. Because I guess, it's more when you look at, for me, it's a matter of intention, as well as, what the main reason why Shadow of War's microtransactions and Battlefront 2's microtransactions are so jarring for me is, it's pay to win. It's like when it comes to microtransactions that are pay to win, that means that it's actively screwing with the game's design. We already had a case last year with Deus Ex Mankind Divided, where the microtransactions were so last minute that they had to make quick adjustments, or like the microtransactions were so last minute that they did there weren't really any adjustments made for the game's design to be designed with the microtransactions in mind. So the game was completely serviceable without the microtransactions. Whereas
I think that actually made them better.
whereas with Shadow of War, you could go through the main campaign. That's perfectly fine. But if you want to go for the true ending, and this blew up, I think around September when the game was about to be launched. If you want to go for the true ending, the new system where you use the like the mind jack orcs to form your army, the whole army versus army system. At the very end of the game, for the true ending, it is such an enormous difficulty curve where you have to either spend hours upon hours grinding or go the easy way with microtransactions.
Yeah.
And with the loot boxes. So that's where, the inherent design is flawed because of the microtransactions. Whereas if you look at a game like one that I'll always one of the best that I've seen recently, and it only just came this year, Injustice 2. It has loot boxes, it has microtransactions, but they're completely separate. The microtransactions are for a currency that you get that you can buy shaders with. And that currency, that's the only thing you can do with that currency. Whereas with the loot boxes, or mother boxes as they are in Injustice 2, they're where you get, your gear pieces, the gear that have like the stat upgrades and alternate looks. But the thing is, those loot boxes can only be either rewarded through completing missions with the multiverse arena mission thing, or purchased through in-game only currency. It's currency that you can only receive in-game. Yeah. So the loot boxes cannot be bought.
Can you buy that currency with real world money?
No, you cannot.
Okay.
There are, it uses the separate currencies, this type of currency to do one thing, stuff like that. But the currency that you explicitly buy through the microtransactions is purely for purchasing shaders, alternate colors. And that can easily be obtained in game as well. The microtransactions are there to just speed up the process, but it doesn't look like the output that you get of the currency is affected at all to encourage some microtransactions. Yeah, it feels completely fair, and again, that's the only thing you can do with the microtransaction currency. Right. All the loot boxes are either obtained in game or purchased with only in-game obtainable currency.
Okay,
which I think is great. Yes, it has microtransactions. Yes, it has loot boxes, but they are inherently separate.
Microtransactions are kind of a funny thing because it's difficult to nail down a definition of what exactly they are, right? A lot of people
cheat codes.
I was going to say, you guys were talking about the Michael Forgey thing. That's more of a DLC. That's how that's been advertised. So I guess that's another thing I was going to bring up is, microtransactions have been a thing since, Guitar Hero 3, where you could purchase extra tracks. So where exactly is that line between DLC and microtransactions? Where is it microtransactions versus say mini DLC?
And I had done a video on that specifically, and we talked about this a little bit last time. Wells, the idea
talked about this extensively last time.
Content versus anti-content, right? The idea of you are paying for a thing, you know what the thing is, and you can determine for yourself, is this thing worth the money I'm going to pay for it? Or are you paying for unlocking something that is already in the game, right? It's been put in there and you just don't have access to it, and you can see it, and it can be you can play against it and all of those sorts of things, and you just get a chance to unlock it. Or something along the lines of, Dungeon Keeper Mobile, where it's a timer and you're paying to just have the timer go away. So you end up with a hell of a debate on that, because of course not everybody's going to agree on the definitions. But I guess that was kind of what I was curious about on the side of positive microtransactions. Like where are there benefits here that maybe are not being touched on?
I really can't think of any, to be honest.
Yeah, the only one really that I can see, I see where you're going with the charity thing. I don't think anybody's tried it with the anti-content model, where you're going to get loot boxes that support charity or anything like that. Like it's usually a DLC push. They're putting a thing into the game that's new, and here we're going to give the money out for this. So I don't know. I mean, but it certainly does have a benefit to players to have a big community. I mean, free to play. This is one of the problem solutions rather. In the game industry, for you've got a bunch of people that don't want to spend $20 on a game. Okay, make it free, put in some kind of alternate monetization, and the whales are going to pay for that game for you, and you get a big group of people that play it because they didn't have to pay to get in. And it does, like, there is a benefit there in it creating this big community, this big player base that wouldn't have otherwise been there if you just charged for the game.
Yeah, I was actually reading through a developer's standpoint on free to play games, and the more honest ones come at it from a standpoint of, okay, 97% of the people that play your game will never give you a single dime. And that's okay. Yeah, the very, very small percentage of people that play free to play games actually pay for something in it. And, you know, again, with microtransactions, it also comes down to what is acceptable there for a free to play game will not be acceptable for a game that you paid $60 for.
You know, one game actually that I think did microtransactions and DLC very well was Lord of the Rings Online. It was still actually around. It's been around like forever.
I remember having had the chance to play
it. It's an MMO, and it's free to play. And there's basically like 3 different models for monetization. There's entirely free to play, and you can earn basically currency to buy whatever you want via completing achievements, quests, things like that, right? Kill X number of this enemy in this area, really grindy stuff, right? There's a subscription model, so you can pay $10 a month or whatever it is, traditional MMO. And then if you do that, you get access to all the stuff except for the actual expansions. And you're given like a stipend of the currency every month that you can spend on whatever you want. And then there's if you just want the currency, you can buy the currency directly. And then if you subscribe for 1 month, I think the Old Republic actually did it.
DC Universe Online does that.
But like, I think that's a good model, and because it allows you to kind of try the game out for free, right? And kind of get a feel for it and decide if you like it. If you do, you can subscribe, which is the route that I would go for a game like just about any MMO. Honestly, I try it for an hour or two, decide if I like it, and then if I do, I'll subscribe. But then if there's like some real little thing that you want, like a mount or something, you can buy just that specific thing as well. So like,
see, I always had a different take on that, because to me it always felt like, the drug dealer back behind the school saying the first taste is free, because they get you hooked playing the game. And it's like, oh, you want to buy that mount? Well, that costs 4 million gold, but you're a free to play member and you can only carry 2 million. So if you want to be able to purchase this mount, you have to be able to have enough gold. So you either have to unlock this, or we've got this subscription service.
Old Republic did that.
Gold. That's pretty much no DC Universe Online. Like, it has a completely free to play model, and I managed to play through it relatively free to play without only spending a few things on microtransactions, purchasing expansion here and there. And it really is, you can relatively go by that way. But there's a certain point at which case, that it does exactly what Sid brought up. Like, it has an in-game, on-hand cash cap. All the rest of the money is in an escrow that you have to escrow withdrawals as part of microtransactions, but they're relatively cheap. But if you subscribe, limitless cash on hand, and another thing is actually all the expansions are free. So it's really just the 1 month subscription fee, and you have access to everything.
Mhm.
And it even gives you a 1 month, like Wells brought up, like every month you get like 500 of the microtransaction currency.
Yeah, I mean,
So you
and
can
for
buy
me,
more
like I when I go into an MMO, I'm looking at it as like, is this something that I'm willing to pay for? Right?
Yeah.
I'm not looking at it. I really don't play free to play games for the most part. I'm either going to buy the game in some form, or I'm not going to play it, because I can't do the microtransaction super microtransaction driven model. Just drives me insane for the most part.
Yeah.
But like with a game like Lord of the Rings Online or any MMO, I'm looking at it as like, is this something that's interesting enough to warrant $10 a month or whatever the monthly subscription cost is, right? And I like having that option. I have a really hard time subscribing to an MMO without having played any of it at any point.
Right.
So I like having that kind of trial period,
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
more
how
of a
I look at it. Is I look at it as a trial period. You know, it's like a demo, right? And then if you decide you want to keep going with the full game, then you go for it. You pay the subscription fee or whatever.
Okay. No, that makes sense. And it doesn't look like we're coming up with much in the way of positive. The monetization model is inherently predatory.
Again, like I was saying, it all has to do with how you design them into the game.
Yeah.
If you design it with the mindset of you want your consumers to keep paying you more because they feel like they have to, that's inherently predatory. What you want is to put into your design to encourage your players to support you, not pay for more of the game, but to support you so you can make more of the game.
Yeah. I just don't know that that's actually a thing that anybody ever does. So,
and the closest is we've been on it MMOs. Like, if I can briefly go into it before we finish, like the one I play most often is like Final Fantasy 14. It's not a free to play. You pay. You have to purchase the game, purchase expansions. But that money, as well as the subscription fee, goes to the servers because it really is a big MMO.
I know. I'm never going to buy that. It costs money to run servers. I totally get that. But Square is not doing poorly, and their threshold for what a game that is doing poorly is much lower than it is needed to be. I think Tomb Raider, didn't they break 6 or 7 million units sold? A game that they said was disappointing in how well it performed.
I might be thinking of either Rise of the Tomb Raider or Alien Isolation. I think it was 3 mil.
It was Tomb Raider. Recently was announced to have reached somewhere. It was 6 or 7 million. I can't remember units sold, which is enormous, and they were disappointed. So I don't know. Anyways, I think we need to move on because I want to rant about something.
Oh boy,
I have a personal embargo against Roberts Space Industries, Chris Roberts and Star Citizen. Because as far as I'm concerned, he's selling a bill of goods. What he hasn't put anything out of consequence. It's been a whole lot of fluff. And they're selling plots of land in Star Citizen now. They have 2 transactions that you can pay for. You can buy a 4 kilometer by 4 kilometer plot of land for $50. Or you can buy an 8 kilometer by 8 kilometer plot of land for $100. So $100 is going to get you 4 times the space for an extra $50. An empty piece of land in an unfinished game that has absolutely no information coming forth about when it's actually going to be released. This pisses me off. I'm tired of the apologist group of people that are still pushing for Star Citizen as it's going to be this great, amazing thing. I mean, it was supposed to be out years ago. He's changed the goalposts so many times. And now, I mean, this is just, it's the ultimate in cynical, money-grubbing nonsense to sell blank plots of land in a game that I can't wrap my head around how somebody can be still excited about something. There's a certain point where, you got to wonder if you're dealing with Stockholm syndrome here. Being abused so many times.
MMO, right?
The Star Citizen was supposed to be. Okay, so let's back up. Free Space was a wonderful space game. Mm-hmm. Right? and there was the Starlancer series. Basically, he was supposed to be making a space sim. It was a single player target. It was you get in a ship. Yeah, you get in a ship and you get to fly around the galaxy and you get to shoot things and you get to, be a resource runner and be a bandit and be all these different things. It was a single player campaign. That was the target. And then he turned it into, it's going to be literally everything that could possibly be done in space, but a millimeter deep, each of the features. They're just going to look gorgeous. So they have at this point, they've got proper rotation of planets that they're working on, as if anybody really gives a shit. It's supposed to be a video game. It's supposed to be fun. He's designing a work simulator and has missed every milestone he's ever announced. So,
yeah. Oh, I can...
Sid, go. Here's the torch.
All right, so... See, want to rant? You can have a rant. All right, so first off, I'm a huge fan of Chris Roberts, always have been since the 90s, early 2000s with Wing Commander and Freelancer and Starlancer and all of those. Those are still some of my favorite video games of all time. I lost count of how many hundreds of hours I put into the Wing Commander games alone. And so when I found out that there was going to be a space simulator game, but not only that, a Chris Roberts space simulator game, I was ecstatic. I was on top of the world. And, I've been waiting for a Squadron 42 to come out, which is the game that was announced. The Kickstarter, the goal of that was, I think, $2 or $2.5 million to be able to make the base game. They blew past that, getting over $4 million by the time the Kickstarter ended. And they continued crowdfunding, and they have stretch goal after stretch goal after stretch goal. There are 68 stretch goals that they had with this game. And so far to date, they've raised over $168 million. This is the largest crowdfunded game in the history of gaming ever, period, by a country mile. And Squadron 42 was supposed to be released at the end of, by Q4 2016, after pushing back the release date multiple times. And here we are, December 2017. Nobody's heard hide nor hair of anything going on in relation to Squadron 42 for God knows how long. We have Star Citizen itself that hasn't even released an update in months, aside from their YouTube videos and everything. There's no actual content update that's been released. And they just recently did, after 5 years of development, they did an engine change from CryEngine to Amazon's Lumberyard, which actually made the game look worse. And so after 5 years of development, now they have to go through and clean everything up after this engine change and everything they're doing. Scope creep is an extreme thing. Then you have, on top of it, the extremely toxic and tribalistic fan base that are still treating Star Citizen as the second coming, even though this is, right now, after 5 years of development, extremely basic, bare bones. Gameplay is basically non-existent, and the ships look pretty, though.
Are we talking as bad as No Man's Sky?
Or
as basic, as I should say.
More basic.
There's some parallels. There's some parallels
the combat's
drawn
better
between Star Citizen and No Man's Sky.
They've promised an entire galaxy with over 100 star systems to be released with this game. They've promised the world, and they provided
a country,
tiny little nuggets.
It's all tech demos.
It's to the point now where it's like, it's been 5 years. You're still in a very early pre-alpha. Yes, it was a Kickstarter and also privately crowdfunded through the RSA website. And now they're getting to the point where they're going to revamp and retool the website, and they're going to remove the crowdfunding status, so you can't even see how much the game is made anymore. And they're releasing these land plots at the same time. We have a $50 and $100, which is just ridiculous. It's insane. Now you're selling empty land in an empty game that is still in very early pre-alpha. And on top of, some ships that cost thousands of dollars. And there are people that have spent tens of thousands of dollars in this game, and it's absolutely ridiculous. And to me, I am so disenfranchised and disenchanted with Chris Roberts and Cloud Imperium and everything like that, that I used to cover Star Citizen quite a bit on my channel. Now it's basically ignored. I've been planning to do a video on this exact topic, but I just haven't gotten around to it because thanks EA. But this is beyond ridiculous at this point. I mean, you're selling empty land in an unfinished game. to continue driving a game that you've stated, if you sold nothing else before you even hit $100 million, if you sold nothing else, you would be able to complete the game. Are you really that hard up for money after building all of these different facilities and all of these different development centers that enough to be able to compete with AAA development studios that you still can't provide us with a game?
How much money have they accrued through donations and crowdfunding?
As of a few days ago, I'd have to go check again, but as of a few days ago, it was over 168 million.
That we know of. I mean, the thing about Star Citizen
that we know
is
of, that doesn't even count investments and, publisher investments and everything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. You can look at the Kickstarter. We know that value because Kickstarter has no reason to hide anything. And that's what helped propel Star Citizen into popularity. I mean, it got a lot of hype based on that. I don't know. I think this is... To say, I kind of had a self-imposed embargo on it. I don't cover it at all. It's just I saw this one and it pissed me off. So, I think what he's doing, I think he's posturing it to basically buy him the next 20 years of development time. It's just going to be a game that this is just an ongoing service, and people buy.
It will never be finished.
Nonsense. Yeah,
it will never be finished at this rate. Where they promised over 100 star systems, and 5 years later, here we are, and there's still. The reason why is because they were planning on procedural generation to make everything work. And so they spent years trying to get the procedural generation developed to the point where it will do what they want it to do. Mm-hmm. And so basically they're pioneering a lot of stuff. They really are. And they're making a lot of innovative changes, and they're developing a lot of stuff, but they're not developing a game. They're developing the tools they need to be able to make the game. They're not making the game itself. Mass Effect Andromeda ran into the same issue with procedural generation. That's why Mass Effect Andromeda ended up with an actual 18-month true development cycles, because they spent so long trying to get procedural generation to work and they couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And now we're running into something similar with Star Citizen, where they're just dumping years with hundreds of people working on this game, trying to get procedural generation to function, to be able to produce what they've promised, and it's not working.
Wells.
Well, that's the main. Go ahead.
Thoughts on Star Citizen, Wells?
Yeah, I mean, it's a meme at this point. It really is. Like, it's No Man's Sky. There's a lot of parallels to be drawn between Star Citizen and No Man's Sky. Mm-hmm. No Man's Sky was another game promised the world it's going to be the greatest thing that ever hit PC. It'll be the best exploration and the best space game that ever was made, and it's going to fix world hunger and bring us world peace, right? No. And then what happened when it came out? It flopped. It completely flopped. It under-delivered on everything. I mean, Star Citizen at this point is the same, except they don't even have a game out yet. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. I don't know. It's one of those things that just pisses me off. At a certain point, they skipped the publisher model, and then they took advantage of the direct customers themselves. There's no publisher to hide behind. There's no logical reason why you get to sell a ship for $1,000. That's just stupid.
So there are some that are far more expensive.
Oh no, yeah, no, I know. They've got the big packs of like $10,000 for a big bunch of ships, and just nonsense. So, I don't know. I want to jump through the next couple because we're going to be over time here. It's one of those things.
The horror! I'm sure everyone will care immensely.
I want to end on a positive, so we're going to hit VR last. Wells brought up that vid.me is closing, and that's kind of sad, actually. I never went there, but I know that a lot of people do or did. They were kind of using it as sort of a secondary video platform. There was a lot of hopes that anybody was going to give YouTube some competition, right? Dailymotion or VidMe or there was another one that I had on the tip of my tongue. And it's gone.
What was the name of that Microsoft?
Vimeo, yes.
There was another one.
Maker? No, that's not Maker.
It's a studio.
I think it was Maker.
It might have been Maker. I know the one that
Mixer.
Mixer, thank you.
Mixer is more of a. I think that's more of a live stream thing.
It is. It's a streaming service. It's more of a Twitch competitor than a YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah. So it always sucks to see a to see, you know, a competitor to YouTube go down, especially when YouTube's kind of being pricks lately.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. This reminds me of when Blip went down last year.
Mm.
Well, the big point
Was
that I
that
wanted to
last year?
Or last year or 2 years ago. I remember I was watching it until suddenly it closed down.
It's like, God, it feels like an eternity ago.
Yeah, the big point that I wanted to bring up with this particular topic, as YouTubers, a lot of the time, you know, we complain about YouTube a lot. You know, Sid, I know you've complained about YouTube, you know, once or twice recently. You know, I do follow you on Twitter, believe it or not. So, you know,
I'm sorry.
I know you've had, you know, just a couple issues with the demonetization bot. You know, there's a small handful of noteworthy YouTubers who have had some, you know, some minor gripes with YouTube over the last, ever. Myself included. You know,
I'm clean. I don't know what the hell you guys are talking about. It's fucking daisies over here.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. You know, it's great for all of us, you know, because YouTube is really the greatest company that ever existed, and they never do anything wrong.
They're the greatest company of robots that don't do anything.
Yeah, and for those of you in the chat who don't understand sarcasm, that was sarcasm. So the point.
This lesson has been brought to you by the letter A.
Yeah, pretty much. So allow me to get on my soapbox now. The reason that I bring it up is that with all the gripes that YouTubers have with YouTube and their lack of communication and how they change the algorithm whenever they want and don't tell us anything about it, and you know, all these different things, one of the things that I often see brought up is, well, why don't you just go make your own video platform? You know
how expensive that is?
Go make your own YouTube. And if you read the actual blog post that VidMe posted when they were closing down, and they said, hey, you know, we're closing down, and they actually shared why. You know, they talked pretty candidly about what did work and what didn't work and why they were closing. The big thing was just money. They can't compete with Google. They can't compete with YouTube for advertising and all these other things. And I think I wanted to kind of bring it up and just kind of point out that, you know, this whole just go make your own YouTube is not realistic. You know, it's yet another company that has attempted to compete with YouTube and just hasn't, because YouTube and Google are so entrenched when it comes to being the video website. It's the place to go for videos. And as, you know, for advertising and as a content creator, you know, that's where the ads are. That's where the money is. That's where people go to actually watch your content, which is always nice. You know, when someone actually watches the video that you put out and put a bunch of time into, it's nice to have people actually watch it.
I like when they watch it before they comment. That's always a bonus.
Oh man, that would be nice. I wish that happened more often, but yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. I think, you know, it just goes to show that YouTube is very entrenched, and I kind of wanted to talk about it a little bit since all of us are content creators and occasionally gripe about YouTube from time to time.
DC?
I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's on that platform where it's not just YouTube has the money. Well, I mean, that's Google. Google basically owns the world at this point. They don't even have to try when it comes to dominating. As soon as they stepped into the phone market, they were able to get on the same level as Samsung. Like the Pixel almost sold just sold under I think it was the S7 at the time when it was coming out. And that was just their first attempt at making a phone. Like, Google basically owns the world that they don't even have to try. And with YouTube, it's kind of it's really sad to see where at the state where YouTube is, where they're so hands back that people are just taking advantage of it left and right. I've been following on stuff you've been dealing with for the past month or two, Sid. Like, it's to a point where people can just take advantage of the broken system. Like I said, it's the greatest company of robots that don't work. But the thing is, it's so big, and it's so, even with how little like Google funds YouTube itself, like YouTube is just a drop in the bucket. But even with that, they don't have to try because everyone's known YouTube since what 2006 wasn't when YouTube started.
Now, to be fair, Google Plus didn't work. So
Failed.
Google
There's a
can't
lot of
do,
Google stuff.
They
There's a
can't
lot of
do
Google stuff out
everything
there
right.
that's failed.
Google Glass didn't really become a thing. Google Fiber is having difficulty. I agree. I mean, YouTube is obviously just going to be ubiquitous for a long time. But then again, people did say that MySpace would never fail, and that eventually happened. I mean, it will happen at some point. Something else will take its place. It's just a question of whether or not Google
it just
will own
requires someone with money.
I could actually see Facebook doing it with the amount of videos that they're hosting now. I could see them starting to step into that.
Facebook is probably the nearest company we have to being able to compete. The only other option would be like Amazon, with Amazon acquiring Twitch. And
I was going to say Twitch because
Amazon would have the capability to do it if they were interested in it. But, you know, you look at YouTube and you see a money pit, you know, because YouTube loses money. Some of that, you know, we don't know enough about the back end of YouTube to figure out if it's even possible to make a streaming service or a video streaming service of that size profitable or not. And that's why these companies rely so much on investing money in automation as opposed to hands-on with people. Is because if they can spend $5 million to get a robot to do the job of 5 people, over the long run, they're money ahead. And so that's why they develop these AIs and everything like that to be able to do this job. Because, you know, they're not kidding when they say 400 hours of videos uploaded to YouTube every minute. Not all of it's good video, but, you know, that's neither here nor there. But all of that stuff still has to be curated. It still has to be maintained. They still have to have storage for it and bandwidth to be able to stream it to people and all sorts of different things. And then, you know, you have the issues with the advertisers, and a lot of stuff can seep through because it's this giant monolithic thing. The only way to keep it from becoming a runaway train like YouTube has become is to institute heavy regulation on what sort of video content you'll even allow on the platform to begin with.
Interestingly, the H3 podcast, they had John Tron on a couple of days ago, and they kind of actually touched on this before VidMe made the announcement, but just kind of talking about how we just as creators kind of have to accept that YouTube is the place. Because the thing is, Google AdWords and AdSense is where all the advertising on the internet comes from.
Yep.
The only way that another YouTube competitor is going to have any chance whatsoever of being successful if it's coming from a company that is basically the size of YouTube, like Facebook or like Amazon. I do honestly think that Twitch is moving that direction.
I was actually going about to bring up.
Slowly but surely, they're getting there. Because
I hope they do. I hope they do. I would love to trade in my red stuff for some purple stuff. I really would. I mean, I've even started streaming on the weekends to be able to, because I don't want all of my eggs in one basket. And if Twitch started offering systems that were comparable with YouTube, I would do my best to start slowly dragging my viewers that direction. I really would. And a lot of other content creators would as well, because people are only loyal to YouTube is because that's where their viewers are. If they can have their viewers somewhere else on a better platform, they will go there. There is no content creator loyalty to YouTube, and there shouldn't be, given everything involved.
True. Absolutely true.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Twitch recently start doing like video uploads, like
it's like podcast? I think it's like 2 years ago now.
Yeah, well, they had it for a while.
Something different. Podcast something different. They actually started allowing actual video uploads like 2 years ago.
Yeah,
but then nobody infrastructure and the searchability and everything like that isn't
there's the problem. They have no discoverability when it comes to those videos. Okay. There's like that's where YouTube really takes the cake, because if I upload a video to YouTube, I know that if I put, if I do my descriptions and my titles and my tags and all this other kind of stuff right, I know that people are going to be able to find my video that they're looking for.
Because it's integrated. The thing with that is because it's, it's with YouTube, all of that, the search optimization, all that, that's all integrated with Google's own algorithms. So you don't even have to try.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, Twitch still has a long way to go, but
They do.
if they get there,
But it has
I think
the
they'll
potential,
find
is the
even
thing.
more support than they might think.
I think they're moving that direction. I think Amazon
Especially with the Amazon partnership.
I think that's why Amazon bought Twitch. I think they're going to eventually try to become a YouTube competitor, but they're years away from being at that point.
Both of them are trying, both YouTube and Twitch are trying to slowly add on services to do what the other one does.
we saw YouTube
And to do what the other one does better.
We saw YouTube gaming 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And
No, I agree. It's sad. It's sad to see any service go down that I know people were using.
Mm-hmm.
I actually know a few
videos
people who were
hosted on
using
VidMe.
VidMe as a YouTube substitute.
Mm-hmm.
I had videos hosted on VidMe. Granted, they were the same videos I had on YouTube, but VidMe, I didn't put too much effort into it because I didn't think they were there. I didn't think they understood. I guess I don't think they had a firm grasp on what it was they were getting into. And so there was a lot of growing pains and a lot of learning to do there, and they probably made more mistakes than they should have. And I think that obviously contributed to what happened. And it's a shame too, because you could see the drive and the passion in that group of people, and to see it fail is never a fun thing. And a lot of people, I lost count every single time I just made it any form of discussion on Twitter or YouTube about YouTube's demonetizations or partial demonetizations. Everyone's like, you should go to VidMe, you should go to VidMe, you should go to VidMe. Like, should I really though?
How long is that going to last?
13 days. So I wanted to close on a good story, a positive, lovely, good story. Show of hands, who's got VR? HTC Vive, Oculus, PSVR?
Nope.
Nobody? It's just me? Oh my god.
I'm broke.
No. See,
So-
I plan on getting VR, but I'm waiting for the next generation of VR headsets to come out, the ones that aren't the prototype technology.
That is the smart way to handle this scenario.
I'm
Yeah,
waiting
like-
for games that are not glorified tech demos.
So
Thank you. Yeah,
the
that
story
too.
goes, VR headsets, and this came off of VentureBeat, in the last quarter, VR aggregated across all of them. So PlayStation, Oculus, Vive, and I'm not 100% confident that Samsung Gear VR is not included in this number. They shipped over 1 million units in a single quarter. This stuff is starting to take off. There's some real big numbers getting thrown around here, and of course, a lot of this is attributable to the price drops for Oculus, which dropped quite a bit lower, and even HTC dropped the Vive down as well. I picked up a Vive after they had done the price drop, and to be fair, in the last couple of weeks, it hasn't got a lot of use, but I have used it a lot, all told. So who's used VR then?
I mean, I got introduced to a Samsung Gear demo unit from a coworker that I checked out. I was like, wow, this is really cool. Looking around, and the demo unit, you were watching some trapeze artists and other things on stage, and there was no sound because we didn't have we had to keep it muted,
right,
because we were in an office space. And I'm just watching everything, and then I turn and look over, and I notice there's someone sitting right next to me that's been trying to talk to me this whole time, and it's like, whoa, what the and then I just started looking around, and there's a lot of amazing possibilities for VR tech that we still don't see a lot of. And I think a lot of it is, they see the main difficulty with VR right now is how it's used, with everything being a glorified tech demo, like Welsknight said, and a lot of it also requires getting up and standing and moving around and stuff. So you have to have a dedicated space for it. Where I think the real drive that will push the technology will be in more stationary aspects. Like you can see it. We're already beginning to see it with like music concerts and everything that you could buy a VR ticket to. And so they have a 360 camera that you can, sit there with your VR headset and enjoy a live concert.
Absolutely.
Or you have, like driving games or flight simulator games or space sim games and all sorts of things that, require you being stationary in a chair. Those can be absolutely mind-blowingly amazing. And, horror games would benefit tremendously from VR tech.
Yeah,
And
no,
so I'm excited to see higher numbers, and the more people that own them, the larger base they have for the technology, the more that can be safely developed for it.
Yeah, I mean, movies didn't make VHS win the format wars over Betamax. Porn did.
Yeah,
right.
Porn will drive VR too.
Silly as a thing it is, it's a thing that people do, and so of course, video games may not actually be all that suited to VR. I will say, having done a lot of gaming with this, there's something about it, even in a game that is very simplistic, and I've described them as they just look like crappy old cel shaded titles, but there's something about being in it and actually having everything move when you turn your head that just makes it feel so much more real, even if it doesn't actually look all that good. It really is kind of special.
It makes you feel like you're in an actual 360
yeah. It's the Star Trek holodeck kind of thing, right?
I was just gonna say, I'm waiting for holodecks. Like, as soon as they come out with an actual holodeck, I'm in. Sign me up.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I'll add one onto the house.
Yeah, I'll go see some Klingon operas. Why not?
If I may add to that, the main keyword that's been said throughout this is prototypes, potentials. That's the main thing with VR at this moment. It has a lot of potential. It's just, not fully realized there yet. PSVR launched last year. What games are out for it? How many?
Yeah, and it's a chicken and egg situation, right? Is that who's going to make a game for something that only 100,000 people in the world have? Okay, well now it's 500,000 people. Now they've shipped 1 million units in a single quarter. These numbers get into, publishers' heads.
That's why for me, VR is definitely something I'm waiting on.
Yeah.
Like Sid said, right now these are just prototypes.
Yeah.
Once, the numbers have gone out.
But a lot of them.
It's like once the numbers have gone out and the interest is shown,
I think we're starting to get there, and that's the difference that's going to happen over the next little while. I mean, just yesterday, and this I should have mentioned this at the beginning, a game that I'm looking forward to trying is Doom VFR. That released yesterday. Apparently, it's got issues on the Oculus right now, but I don't have an Oculus. I have a Vive. So I'm looking forward to getting a hold of that one and trying it out, because it'll be a real game experience. It won't just be a tech demo, right? Star Trek Bridge Crew looks like an absolute blast. I really want to play it. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. Resident Evil was another one. Skyrim VR is PlayStation exclusive because fuck you, Sony. But it'll come out on PC at some point because it comes out on every platform. That's what Skyrim does. But Sid's totally right. This is the thing about VR. What will make VR succeed is experiences that you can do in a game that you cannot do in real life. And playing a video game is not that. Being in the front row of a Metallica show is that. Being good seats at the Super Bowl is that. A camera mounted to the back of some Sherpa that is walking up the side of Mount Everest is that. That's the stuff that will make VR succeed. It is not video games. Video games will be a nice little aside. I'm still waiting for Blizzard to do one. Give me Hearthstone sitting at a rough table in a tavern with goblins running around and just crazy nonsense happening.
Amazing.
And let me play Hearthstone on the table in front of me. It would, I hit the other guy with my card and my character. I can reach across and punch him. Like there are so many ways you can do this and make it look awesome. But Blizzard's going to wait until there's enough people that have VR before they do it.
Well, if I may add to that, the main thing is, you said those figures are probably just, the main systems, PSVR, Vive, Oculus. The main contender is mobile VR, because like the stuff that you described, that's right at the helm for mobile VR. You have the Gear, the Galaxy Gear VR. You have Google Cardboard. You just make a get some cardboard, put it together,
Yep.
and you
'Cause everybody
already
has a
have a
phone.
pre-installed app.
Yeah, I think what will probably drive it even further would be not with VR, but with AR. When you're dealing with things like video games and stuff, is to where you can have, or not even video games, say you just have a Microsoft AR goggles on, to where you have, oh, that wall over there is playing Netflix, while over here I've got, news reports spanning through that I can have a haptic glove that will just swipe through for me and stuff like that. And where, your computer doesn't have monitors anymore. Instead, you have your headset with different screen sizes that you can position and move around yourself. A lot of that would be beyond amazing. And eventually we'll probably get to that point.
And then you don't have to
Correct me if
minimize
I'm wrong,
windows
isn't
when your
that
mom
what
walks in the room.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, isn't that what the HoloLens was supposed to be?
Yeah, and that's kind of where they're going. There's a whole bunch of AR headsets that are coming out now. Acer was doing one. I can't remember. I think I want to say Lenovo, but I feel like that's wrong. There was 4 or 5 different AR headsets that were in construction, and I believe some of them can be bought now, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
HoloLens prototypes are out, not commercially, but I think you can apply for one, kind of like how you could apply for an Oculus kit.
It was a dev kit kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, I wanted to talk about VR because I'm excited about it. It's a lot of fun. I cannot recommend anybody buy it yet because it's expensive. If you've got money to burn, fine. But give it another 4 or 5 years, and we're going to have consumer grade headsets that are $200-$300 with high res screens, and it's going to start to be fantastic. My prediction was always 3rd gen VR is when it goes mainstream, and I stand behind that prediction to this day.
I completely agree. And that's why I'm still waiting for the 2nd gen VR before I buy them. So.
Yeah, exactly. Wells, any thoughts on VR? Have you tried it out?
I have not actually touched VR. As I said, I'm waiting for games that are more than a glorified tech demo, or if like one of the VR companies just wants to like send me one for free. Like I'll accept.
There we go. There we have an offer right there. Don't play Minecraft. Apparently, it makes people sick.
So I've heard. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of interest in it until there's a game that really catches my eye. I think the closest one's been Resident Evil. I think it was just Resident Evil 8, or maybe it had some special name.
7.
But
that was 7.
No, was it 7? Oh yeah, because
Resident Evil 7 is the one that's VR compatible.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, Resident Evil was the first game that I saw that I was like, But that's pretty much it. Star Trek Bridge Crew, yeah, but I think that would also be one where you'd really kind of have to have some friends to play it with to really kind of have fun with it. I can't really see myself enjoying that too much, just being one guy, So.
Oh, that makes sense. All right, boys, I think we're done. I think we're at the end here. So what I want to do, I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to rampantly shill your own personal projects. We will start with DC. What are you doing? What do you got coming up? And let people know again where they can find you.
Well, you can find me. I'm streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv/DCDungeonMaster. I have 2 channels on YouTube. Daybreak commentaries for Let's Plays. We've been on a hiatus for a while. We're starting to get some content rolling again, most likely next week. As for my own personal content, that's my main channel, DC Dungeon Master. I also have a website, dungeoncrawl.wordpress.com. I'm currently in the process of recording some things to, get a backlog going. Currently working on some videos regarding, nostalgia and the problem encompassing, trying to plan ahead for sequels without really knowing if there's one for one. Beyond Good and Evil is going to be a good series I'm looking at, for an example. And right now I'm working on some reviews. Starting off with a Bubsy review of the new game that just came out, and using that to tie into a retrospective for Gianna Sisters.
Good stuff. Wells,
do you lack a sense of pride and accomplishment?
Yes.
Is that something you need in your life?
According to EA, you're damn right.
I have the perfect offer for you. If you go right now to youtube.com/WellsNightGaming or youtube.com/WellsAfter, you'll have 2,581 videos to watch for your viewing enjoyment, after which you can espouse a feeling of pride and accomplishment for making it through that much content. All of my content is family-friendly, fat-free, organic, and all-natural.
Gluten?
Gluten-free, sure.
There you go.
We'll throw it in there. But no, in all seriousness, I'm a family-friendly YouTuber. YouTube.com/WellsNightGaming is my main channel, focusing primarily on indie games and Minecraft. YouTube.com/WellsAfterDark, all one word, is my second channel for stuff that just doesn't really fit on my main channel. Stuff like RimWorld, Binding of Isaac, strategy games, all that kind of stuff. I also stream at twitch.tv/Welsknight. And you can find me on Twitter at WellsKnightPlays.
Sid, go.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha. I have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/SidAlpha, where I do video game news, first impressions, and all sorts of other nonsense, industry commentary, and things like that. I also have a Twitch channel right here on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/Sid_Alpha, because some dirty stole my name. And I stream typically on the weekends here at 10 a.m. Saturdays and Sundays, which Tarmack is probably going to get irritated with because it conflicts with the time that he streams. That's okay. And generally, I just do light video gameplay and give people a chance to have kind of, a chance to ask me questions about games and, events in the gaming industry over the course of the week. So please do go check it out. I also have Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, I would say VidMe, but that's not going to last too much longer. Sorry. So yeah, basically just put in /SidAlpha somewhere. I'm sure you'll be able to find me.
And a trademark.
Yes, I filed for a trademark to be able to combat some bad actors that have been trying to go after me for shining a light on their deplorable activities.
Good stuff.
So soon I will have a tiny little TM next to my name.
We should chat after this whole thing about that. I'll shoot you a DM on Twitter.
Okay. Good stuff, guys. My name is Tarmack. You can find me on YouTube at the GnomeCast, at GnomeCast on Twitter. Tarmack Gaming here. Please follow the channel. We do this. It's basically the first Saturday of every month. So the next one is on January 6th. It has been an absolute blast talking with you guys. On my stuff I've got coming up, the news wrap-up will be tomorrow, as it normally is. I've got a feature creep kind of working, talking about Hellblade and how maybe it can be a good example for AA video games going forward. Other than that, I don't think I have an awful lot else, so thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you the next time we do this. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.